All right, a special counsel appointed by the LA Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission has issued an explosive report on deputy gangs inside the Sheriff's Department, calling them a cancer that must be excised. The report calls on Sheriff Robert Luna to adopt a policy that prohibits deputies from participating in deputy gangs and make it clear that this is a top priority, and he should state his intention to make this happen immediately. Now, the report also identifies at least half a dozen active gangs and cliques and names them, which include the executioners, the banditos, the regulators, the Spartans, the gladiators, the cowboys, and the reapers.
And here to discuss the report and police reform across the country is retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Thanks so much for joining us here on Fox Soul's Black Report.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sergeant Dorsey, share with us, what's your response to this damning report on the LA County Sheriff?
Well, this is nothing new, and I've certainly been speaking on this issue for several years with Sheriff Alex Villanueva at the head of that agency, and that's part and parcel, I believe, as to why he was not reelected. For folks who think their vote doesn't matter, it absolutely does. And so, my concern has always been, you've got high-ranking officials. At one point, the undersheriff, Paul Tanaka, was an admitted Viking. I mean, he's serving time right now in federal prison with a former sheriff, Lee Baca. So this is nothing new. This has been going around on the Sheriff's Department reportedly for over 50 years. And while they acknowledge the existence of half a dozen, it's purported that there are really about 17 different internal gangs where they go out and they get inked up when they put hands on somebody and beat them, when they get involved in a use of force. There's deputies allegedly who go out and try to provoke an incident where they can get into a shooting so they can get inked. And so my concern was always, is Sheriff Villanueva an executioner? We need to have somebody pull up these deputies' pants leg and see what's going on with these inkings that they have, to see who's actually involved and what really are they going to do. I mean, Luna says he's going to look into it. Okay, and then what?
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. You just mentioned the new sheriff that's been elected, Robert Luna. Do you think he's up for the challenge of, reprogramming and redirecting this department?
I hope he can make some substantive change, but I'm a realist. This has been going on in that department for decades, and it's institutionalized, it's systemic, and when you've got chiefs of staff, when you've got an undersheriff or two who's an admitted, known gangster, how deep is that in that organization? And are you really going to be able to excise those officers? Because listen, it's reported that these deputies are so-called shot callers, like you hear references in prison. They're the ones who determine who work specialized units, who get the overtime assignments. And so I'm not sure if he's really going to be able to do this single-handedly.
And considering that the LA County Sheriff is one of the largest local law enforcement agencies in the country, when we look at this report and the Department of Justice report on the Louisville Police Department, is this the beginning of the change that many protesters, like Black Lives Matter activists, have been marching for?
I don't say no to any of the changes, and understand you need to pay attention to the verbiage that's used. Merrick Garland, I appreciate his effort. He's making a recommendation. And so I don't know if there are any teeth behind that recommendation. Police chiefs have total autonomy in terms of how they comport themselves and how they run their fiefdoms, their police departments, and understanding that every police chief serves at the pleasure of an elected mayor. And so they're giving us a lot of lip service right now. But listen, they've disbanded units and reconstituted them. The Vipers gave them a different name. They've taken over in Memphis officers out of the Scorpion unit, disbanded it, and put them where? In patrol. It's not like these officers aren't still out there working patrol, dealing with people day in and day out. And so my concern is, what really are they going to do? And oh, by the way, we know that these officers, some of them are proven and demonstrated liars. They lied on affidavits to get search warrants, particularly in the case of Breonna Taylor. These are compromised officers. Once they're shown to be a liar, everything that they've touched is tainted. So what is a district attorney going to do across these 18,000 police departments where we have people serving time right now in jail on a lie that was put forth by a compromised officer?
Yeah, you just mentioned a lot of these units where a lot of the complaints and the mistreatment stem from across the country. What do you think, more specifically, these units, how can these units be redirected, or do they need to continue to be disbanded from being so reckless? Is it a blue culture? Is it a lack of training? Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's certainly part of the culture, and that can be whether you're in a specialized unit or if you're just working patrol, as I did for 20 years on LAPD. I worked in a specialized unit, South Bureau Crash, our gang detail. And so I understand how these units work, and I understand the mindset on some of the officers that are there. And that's why it's so important to have field supervisors like myself, a sergeant, who's out there, whether you're in patrol or on a specialized unit. We know that the Scorpions were out there unsupervised, and these were almost officers who were just a click above a probationer. So you need patrol sergeants out there rolling on these calls, monitoring, evaluating their officers in the field to make sure that they're dealing with the community in a way that's appropriate. And when you find officers are not, then there should be swift and substantive administrative action. We don't need a federal national registry. We don't need a list. These agencies know who the bad actors are. You think Derek Chauvin wasn't on a list with 20 plus personnel complaints? 3 of the Memphis 5 had personnel complaints. C.J. Davis knew absolutely who these people were, yet she allowed them to remain on that Scorpion unit and ignored complaints that were coming in from the community. And so we've got to roll our sleeves up as a community, get involved and get engaged, and demand substantive change, not lip service, not a list, not a recommendation, but real change. Get these bad doers off of those police departments, decertify them so they don't get to resign and move to another agency.
Yeah.
Well, we really want to thank you, and we want to invite you to come back again. Police reform continues to be in the national headlines. We know that mayors play an outsized role in advancing police reform, as do presidents and Congress. And so, please come back again to help us make sense out of what's happening, what could happen, and what's not happening.
Yeah, and from sister to sister, you look amazing. I just want to throw that in there on Women's History Month. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.